Okay. What's up, guys? So today I thought we would cover the topic of, are you really an INTP and how do you know? And I'm going to merge some clips of me with my friend Alex in along the way here. But first, I thought it would make sense to start by taking an online personality test to give us something to work with. So this is just a first test I got when I searched online for personality tests. So let's take a look at it. So yeah, I agree with that. I tend to care about how others feel when I'm talking with people. In fact, I have a hard time disagreeing with people. I jump right in, really, every time I've gotten a new job or gone to a new situation. I can fire people. I don't like to. I mean, always interested in crazy, off-the-wall ideas. And it says I'm an INFP. Yeah, so what does that mean? Am I an INFP? Or am I an INTP who acts like an INFP? And same for you. How do you know?
Well, here's a good question. Do you think people see me as an intellectual or more of a feeler?
People see you as an intellectual, but we've discovered today that that's not really the case. You're not intellectual at all.
The way that this works is genetically, your brain is wired to have certain tendencies in how you take in information and process information and interact with the world. And that's what we're trying to figure out here. Not how you tend to act or what you think is idealistically who you are, right? How much do you really know about the cognitive functions? I mean, if I were to ask you a bunch of random questions like, if you're working on a project at school and you're parsing out certain details with your group members, what functions are you using? Could you answer that question? The thing you should understand is that, in your ego, you have 4 functions. First function for INTPs is TI, second function is NE, third function is SI, fourth function is FE. And then, of course, you've got your shadow. But the thing to understand about that is your first function, you're optimistic about it. The second function, you're pessimistic. Third function, you're optimistic. And your fourth function is pessimistic. Those first functions, if you were to ask it in ENTJ, because it's like water to a fish, they may not realize that TE is their strongest function, or an INTP wouldn't necessarily know that TI is their strongest function in the way that you would think. You're always optimistic about your first function, okay? Meaning that you don't view it negatively. Like, for example, ENFPs and ENTPs have no problem being manipulative because they're seeing patterns in the future and they're just acting on those patterns. They're not really thinking about what to do about those patterns. So, for example, they have an idea of, like, say you're a salesman and you're trying to sell someone something. You can see that if you act this way, that there's a pattern that the customer will tend to interact with you this way. And so, if you act this way, you're more likely to sell the product. And so you will act that way. It's not that you're not even aware that you're doing that. So one way to think about it is, if you're introverted and you're very critical about what's true and you're always focused on ideas, you might actually be an INFP. Or ENTPs can be like this too, depending on if they're stressed or their life circumstances. But INTPs, they're really more optimistic about what they think about things. And they tend to think they're correct, actually. So you've got to really understand that distinction between the two. And both types can be very detailed, and that's why it's confusing. When you're looking at your own feelings and your own thoughts as each type, you'll find that you're not very good at conveying your feelings to others if you're an INFP, or conveying your thoughts to others if you're INTP. If you are an INTP, you'll have all these deep understandings of things, but your ability to relate to others is not necessarily something you'll naturally be able to do until you're a little bit older. And again, if you're having trouble still just making a distinction between these, I recommend researching introverted thinking and introverted feeling, and extroverted thinking and extroverted feeling. And that's interesting because I've noticed, and this is another cue, that all of my best friends growing up have been INFJs and ENFJs. So that's another thing to look at. If everyone around you is more of an NF type, or you might actually be an INFP instead of an INTP, or another type as well, depending on what types you're around all the time. If you're ISTP, you may spend a lot of time around weightlifters or people who are like the cool professor archetype. So don't look to yourself to see who you are. You really need the feedback externally. Ask people about yourself. That will tell you more about yourself. And they've proven this in studies. There's a book called Insight by Tasha Eurich. Great book, by the way. I recommend reading it. It's really good, especially if you have trouble typing yourself. It's not about Myers-Briggs, but lots of insights there that are useful for everyone.
Another important factor to consider is that some people have special brain patterns that aren't characteristic of any of the types. For example, Dario Nardi found in his research that if you are left-handed, there's a 50% chance that you have completely different brain activity than any of the types. And also, if you have some sort of diagnosis like ADD, Asperger's, anything like that, that will also influence your brain patterns. As for me, I am both left-handed and I have Asperger's. So I imagine that I have some unusual brain pattern. So perhaps it's possible that I'm some sort of INFP, INTP hybrid. Because what the Myers-Briggs says and talks about is that there are certain patterns you fall into, not that you are exactly this person. Dario Nardi found that if you have the same personality type, according to Myers-Briggs, as someone else, that means there's an 80% chance that you will have very similar brain activity. There's something like a 3% chance, if you're the same type, that you will have almost exactly the same brain activity. And then the other 17% or so was less than similar brain activity. So it varies, but statistically, if you have the same type as someone, you're way more likely to think like they do and process like they do. And that's kind of the point. If you can classify people quickly, then it helps facilitate your interactions with other people. It helps you know who you are. It answers a lot of questions that are very hard to answer without a system or a theory like typology. The thing about me is I'm very emotional and I enjoy deep emotional conversations with people. And I play music. Music is my favorite thing. Sound is my favorite thing. But at the same time, I really enjoy researching logic. I love math. I love optimizing systems. So it's like, it's confusing, right? And for any of those of you out there who have similar predicaments, what does that mean? Rather than presenting my own clear conclusions about this, I would rather have a discussion. So, do you think I'm an INFP, an INTP, perhaps a hybrid? And what do you think your type is? Are you sure you're still an INTP? Or do you think maybe you're an INFP or some other type? Or are you left-handed and you think you're just a little bit different? Or maybe you have some sort of diagnosis. If you thought this was helpful, share this video, like it. If you didn't, don't like it, don't share it, whatever you feel. And with that, I'll see you next time. I'm trying to work on some content with the functions and addressing other important problems that people run into. So I will see you then.